So it's the same project number. It's just a different conditional use
Yeah, but I
permit
was looking in the
application number.
USDO for the ability to make a similar, whatchamacallit, conditional use permit application. And I guess you guys are saying that it's a substantial change to allow the application to go through. But I'm trying to figure out where in the USDO makes that delineation.
Yeah, let me. Sorry, I'm just trying to set up the live stream, so I'm a little.
Oh yeah, no problem. If you need to put me on hold while you look for it, that's fine.
No, not at all. I just got that up, so I can now look. I forget the particular section. Let me put the PowerPoint up, and then let me get to what you were mentioning with the new application. Okay. So yeah, so there's that memorandum that was sent to the board, and that's on the website as well. Sorry, I'm trying to help someone get into the meeting as well. So there's a section of the code that states that, you know, if an application has a public hearing and gets denied, no similar application can be heard for a year.
Right, and that's what I was looking for. Because it goes in, because I'm in the conditional use permit, which is 375-5E16, and it goes over the review standards. But I didn't see what you were talking about, the limitation for a year, because what I'm kind of questioning is what is the criteria of the difference? You know what I mean? Like I read through all of their all of the site plans and compared it to their original plan with this new application. I should say the original application with this new application. So I'm trying to figure out what are the criteria that says that this is okay to be accepted, or they have to wait for the year. So I was hoping it would be in that section where it says it waits for a year, unless X, Y, and Z, and I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't specify like what the chief planning official or Chris must use in order to determine. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So does he have discretion in order to say whether or not a substantial change or not?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a discretionary thing. Got it. That helps. But do you know the section where it says that it's prohibited from coming back after a year?
Yes. So in the memo, it's 375-5D. So it's before all of the review standards for each type of application. So it's 5D12E2, which is on
5D and E. So let me, all right, 375D12, you said?
Yeah, D12E and then 2. So that's on page 231 of the USDO. It's probably a different page of the PDF. But that speaks to prior application denial.
This page 231, I'm not getting that. I'm getting on-premises signs that require a sign permit.
Sign permit too.
Maybe the version of the USDO that I have. I don't know. Maybe. What was the section again? I'll look at it by section. Give me the section one more time to slow it down a little bit for me.
Yep. So it's 375.
Okay.
-5.
-5. Okay.
D is in David.
I'm in D. Okay.
12.
All right. I'm in 4. Let me get to 12. All right. 12. I'm here.
Yep. And then E.
Limitation of subsequent similar. Okay.
And then it's the next page right above 13, construction of improvements.
Yep. Yep. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay.
Got it. All right. I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And I'm still just, I'm assisting someone with logging on, so I'll just be a few
No worries.
minutes just before the
Cell phone has to go for another
meeting starts.
hour and 25 minutes.
Okay, Zach, I'm finally on.
Okay.
Who do we have here with us? Hi, Glenessa.
Yeah.
That's all we have so far. Okay. So let's see here. I just printed this out. Okay, Sheridan. I hope we can move through this one quickly. The Sheridan Avenue.
Sorry, Al, I'm just trying to assist someone with getting the login information to attend the meeting. Okay.
We got quite a group already.
I have not even seen that yet. Been trying to do, oh, yeah, there we go. Okay.
Public meeting, okay. So with 176 Sheridan, can we move through that one quickly?
Yeah, I mean, the applicant has prepared a presentation just because the board didn't state that they wanted to review that as a consent agenda item. So they do have a presentation. It's relatively short, you know, but I think the applicant would prefer that. We don't have any public speakers registered for the application, so you know, I
You
don't
say the applicant would prefer what?
Oh, I'm saying
To
I
do
think
the
the applicant would also prefer the presentation be short. You know, I think they were hoping it would be a consent agenda item, so I think that's why they kept the presentation short. Sorry, what else am I trying to say? I think they were hoping it would be a consent agenda item so that they wouldn't have to present tonight. So I think, speaking to your point, that should be able to happen.
So, where are we here?
Let's see, we
Martin's
have 1,
on.
2, 3, 4. So I think we're just missing Roman.
Roma.
Let me check to make sure he's not in the attendees list. Doesn't look like it.
I'll give him a quick call. Did you get a new what? Yes. No, it wasn't today. Zach sent it out a while ago. On Friday. Zach, I have Roman on the phone. Can you send him the link? Probably
Yep, we'll
easier
do.
than him looking for it. Okay, he's going to send it to you right now. You got it. Let me know when you're ready. I'll do the introduction as usual.
Yeah, give me just 1 sec. I just want to make sure. I think that should be. Yeah, I think.
I'm here.
Perfect. That's great.
No laughter, please.
We'll save that for the end.
Exactly. Only
Are
on
you
you.
relegated? Are you relegated to the front porch in the cold weather, Roman? Looks like you're.
Yeah, it was either in the dining room or the porch. So I'm back on the porch. So it's kind of like I'm in the dark, which I'm okay. I'm used to being in the dark.
As long, I hope you don't freeze out there.
I got a heater on. We use the porch
Okay.
until like Thanksgiving time.
Okay, anytime you're ready, Zach, we can
Hold on
go.
1 second.
Yep, we're all set.
No, I wiped it down.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the October meeting of the Albany City Planning Board. We have a number of items on the agenda, so we hope that we can have a relatively short meeting, but at the same time, we want to make sure everybody is heard. The rules of procedure that we have adopted is this. Each topic and each project that we consider, the applicant will have 10 minutes to present. If they are coming on for a presentation the second or third time around, they get 6 minutes. The planning board then will have the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, get clarifications, etc. The planning staff then will either at that time or later, depending on what the project is, will present its findings. And when I say at that time or later, it depends on when we have the members of the public speak. Each member of the public will have 3 minutes, unless they are representatives from the Common Council who represent a larger area. They will have 6 minutes to make comments. In a little bit, our planner on staff, Zach Powell, will explain how the timing will work. But I do recommend that if you want to speak, to make sure that you let Zach know far in advance if you can, through the chat function, and also that when you speak, if someone else has raised the points that you wanted to raise, just indicate that you agree. If you have any other points, it'll give you more time to speak to the other points that you may want to raise. We have a full board here today, as well as our Corporation Counsel, the Commissioner of the Department of Planning, and as I mentioned, Zach Powell, our Principal Planner. Zach, can you now indicate how the timing works for the public and Common Council?
Yeah, thanks, Al. Just want to clarify again.
Presenters.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Just want to clarify again, just a senior planner. We have a great principal planner, Lauren Alpert.
I just keep wanting to elevate you. I figured I would, since the commissioner's there.
So as Al mentioned, members of the public will have 3 minutes to speak. Please make sure to sign up early. And if you do want to sign up through the chat function or have already emailed, we've put your name already on the list. If you do want to sign up on the chat function, please make sure to put your name, your address, and then the application or applications that you want to speak to on the agenda tonight. So when it is your turn to speak, we'll put up a timer on the screen that'll provide a countdown timer for the 3 minutes that you're permitted to speak. Again, as Al mentioned, members of the Common Council get 6 minutes to speak since they serve a larger area, their wards. When it gets to 30 seconds, there will be an audible and visible beep and change, indicating that you have 30 seconds left. And when your time has expired, there'll be 3 beeps as well. And so if you have any questions about, how to sign up or any elements of how to register to speak, feel free to send a message via the chat. We'll try to get to it as quickly as possible, but a lot of that will be me navigating the meeting as well as trying to respond to questions. So thank you for your patience ahead of time. And I think, Al, that's about it on the public comment instructions.
Okay. So then I believe we can get started with the first project. The first project is DPR 105, 176 Sheridan Avenue, which is a request by the Interfaith Partnership for the Homeless to have a major development plan review for the conversion of a small townhouse into an office. Now, this is a project that we have seen a number of times dating back to last year, and unfortunately, with a simple request, it has taken a long time to get to this point. Everything according to our report has been satisfied, and I would recommend that we look at this as a consent agenda item. And I would like to ask the council, the planning board members, if they would agree to a consent agenda for this first item. Can I have an affirmation?
I'm fine with it, Al.
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm good as well.
Thank you. The recommendation by the staff is a waiver for a requirement of 5 street trees. If you remember, that was an issue because of the way that the front of the building faced the street and all of the impediments in there. The recommendation is to improve, and then the recommendation to grant the development plan as presented is also to approve. So we'll take this one at a time. The first one, the waiver to require 5 street trees. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Roman Kuchera and seconded by Glenessa Gayard to allow for the waiver of street trees. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Other people there that might have your microphone muted. Okay. Well, there's 3 ayes, so that is approved. I think we have a technical problem with some microphones being muted. The second recommended action is to approve the major development plan as presented. I would entertain a motion for approval of that.
So moved again.
Second.
Moved by Roman, second by Chris.
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that time we got all the microphones on. Thank you. So 176 Sheridan Avenue is approved. And again, I apologize to the applicants if any of you were on and listening in. I understand this took way longer than it should have. There should have probably been a consolidation of the issue concerning the lot consolidation and the changes of zoning all at once. But when all of that happened, then the coronavirus hit, and I understand it took a long time for City Council, Common Council to move forward on that and then get it back to us. And then it took a while for us to move forward on it due to the way the whole thing was configured to begin with. But it's approved, and we can go on to the next item. The next item is the 76 project. This is again, major development plan review for this large development that we have seen before. And this is again, an update. It's for us to hear more about the plan and how it is moving forward. The applicants have also requested a number of rulings on either waivers or having the planning commissioner approve some recommended changes or through interpretation of the zoning code. So we can proceed.
And I think Kelsey, Stephanie, and Ed, you should be panelists now, so you should be able to unmute. And then just let me know when you're ready to start presenting, and then I can start the 10-minute timer.
Thank you, Zach. I think we're ready.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, everyone. Kelsey Carr with Chazen. I'm here with Stephanie Ferradino, as well as Ed Larkin from Chazen as well, on behalf of South End Development. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
So we received a comment letter from planning staff on October 6th, and many of those comments were outlined during last month's planning board meeting. And we provided a point-by-point response letter on the 15th of this month, just prior to the workshop. But given the complexity and uniqueness of this project, there are definitely certain aspects of the project that don't perfectly fit in the box of the USDO language. But we feel that based on the design, meet the broader intent of the code. So in order to be proactive in our discussions, we've identified 7 potential waivers that can be reviewed and approved in alignment with the recent zoning text amendment for that process. And we provided a detailed narrative walking through the 5 review criteria for each of those items. And those review criteria are outlined here. For the sake of time, I'm not going to read through them. So next slide. The first item was within the district standards for the MUCI zone. And this is that no parking garage shall be located within 50 feet of a boundary with an R1L, R1M, R2, or RT district. And based upon this figure, you'll see that we have 3 subsurface parking spaces that fall within the 50-foot buffer of the R1M zone. But it's important to note that the R1M zone is only a single parcel at this location, and it contains the charter school. So it's not a residential use. And also our parking at that location is completely subsurface. So these spaces will not create an undesirable change or impact to the adjacent properties. And so we're therefore requesting a waiver to allow for those 3 spaces to remain. The next waiver is to provide 9-foot by 18-foot parking stall dimensions where 9-foot by 20-foot is required. And this request is stemming directly from previous comments we received to allow for a design that reduces the quantity of excavation while maximizing the quantity of on-site parking spaces being provided. And so these dimensions are pretty common for municipalities across New York State, and we feel that they allow for adequate turning vehicle movements. Next slide. The next comment came from the USDO section on parking garage design. And it's important to note that that section of the code begins by stating that above ground parking garages shall meet the following standards. And then it goes on to indicate one of those standards is that when located in any mixed use zoning district, the ground floor of the parking garage shall be designed so that any frontage adjacent to a public street has a minimum floor to ceiling height of 13 feet to allow for future conversion to commercial or institutional uses. And in our case, more than 50% of the garage levels fall below the average grade plane of the adjacent roads. And therefore, by code, the garage is considered subsurface. And also, based on the USDO definition for ground floor, the parking levels do not meet that definition because portions, more than 50% of them, are actually below grade. So in this instance, we feel that this section of the code does not apply and that a waiver would not be required. Next slide. The next comment was related to the dimensional standard for alternative energy equipment or facility solar, indicating that they may not extend more than 18 inches above the maximum building height. And in this instance, the maximum building height for the MUCI zone is 8.5 stories. In our case, we have building B, which is the tallest building, is 8 stories tall. And since the USDO does not define an actual height of a story, we took this as the average height of the stories within our development, which would be 10 foot 10 inches. And based upon that, a half of a story, which is the remaining that we have to hit the maximum, would be 5 foot 5 inches. And so with that, the extension of 18 inches above that would be 6 foot 11 inches. And in our case, we're proposing that the solar canopy height would be 8 foot above the roof level. So we would be requesting a waiver of 1 foot 1 inch above the requirement of the code. Next slide. The next item related to the building and streetscape design indicates that each principal building shall have 1 or more operating pedestrian entry doors facing and visible from an adjacent public street. And in this case, as you know, the site topography is very steep along Crank and Leonard Street. And we have the existing Scott Street, which we're planning to decommission and convert into a pedestrian-only plaza. So in this case, we are proposing that all of the doors for the commercial spaces in buildings B and C would be accessible off of the pedestrian plaza. And in this way, we're keeping the pedestrian flow in the safe inner plaza as opposed to the very steep and narrow side roads. And so by doing so, we feel that we're meeting the intent of the code in providing, you know, the entries off of what would be the new neighborhood core. And then this also lines up with the comments that we received from the fire department in that they actually prefer that we have the emergency access stairwells on the adjacent roads and then the commercial access off of the plaza, in that the plaza is actually 75 feet wide, which is wider than a typical right-of-way. Next slide. The next item is related to, again, building and streetscape design, where the principal building shall have, basically, it's indicating it shall have a parapet constructed along each facade abutting a public street, and that the design or height of the parapet shall include at least one change in setback or height of at least 2 feet along each 100 linear feet of facade. So this is, again, a unique scenario because we are proposing modular construction, and it's actually very difficult and very expensive to incorporate parapets in modular construction. The typical thing of the industry is actually to provide inserts to allow for a fall protection fencing along the edge as opposed to a parapet. And the other unique thing is that based upon the topography of the site, our buildings are oriented so that they do not have the long faces of the building along the frontage of the steep roads of Crank and Leonard Street. And so with that, we do not have any portion of our frontage where we have a building face that's longer than 100 feet. But in order to meet the intent of the code, what we've done is we've provided variation in elevations of those faces that front along the roads. So we've got the variation in the number of stories of the building. We also have the variation created by the cores of the elevators and the stair towers, as well as the canopies, which will provide additional variation. Next slide. The next item is indicating that projects shall install at least one bench, bicycle rack, planter, trash receptacle, or piece of public art per 50 feet of street frontage. And so this figure actually shows you all of the items that we're providing. We've got benches, planters, as well as art. And based upon this distribution and the latest plans that were submitted, we are actually meeting this requirement of the code by providing 6 benches, 11 planters, and 4 pieces of art. And they are spaced pretty evenly along the frontage, with the exception of the planters, which we actually have. Building D will have a full planter along its frontage on Seymour Street. And then also on the Crank Street side, we've got multiple planters that will be spaced throughout, as well as the wetland planters adjacent to Building C. Next slide. This was just one of the comments. This isn't specific to a waiver, but there was a comment about requiring or providing the appropriate number of bicycle parking spaces. So the latest plans do actually show that we have interior bike storage rooms that will be on each of the parking levels that will provide 108 enclosed bicycle parking spaces. And we also have 4 exterior bike racks that will provide an additional 20. And then on top of that, we are still looking to partner with CDPHP Cycle to provide for the bike share. Next slide. There was also a comment related to the maximum front setback as it relates to Building B and the frontage of 2nd Avenue. And in order to resolve that issue, we are actually planning to temporarily subdivide the property into 3 parcels. So there will be basically the phase 1 development parcel on the south, and then 2 separate phase 2 parcels along the 2nd Ave frontage. And by doing so, there's no longer a front setback that comes into play for phase 1 for 2nd Ave. And then there was also a comment related to the maximum lot coverage. And based upon this configuration of those 3 parcels, we are getting close, but we will be just below the 60% maximum lot coverage. And based upon the sustainability goals of the project, we will be meeting that mostly by the green and blue roof systems that we're designing, which will capture 100% of the rainwater for reuse on the property. Next slide, or was that it? Oh, you're right. This I think is the last one, but there was also a few comments related to side setbacks and encroachments. And the latest plans do show that all of our buildings are 100% on our property. In addition, we've modified the solar canopies so that we are maintaining the 2-foot required side setback for 70, 84, and 86 Second Avenue. And I think that's it, and we'll turn it over to questions.
Board members, there's a lot here to digest, and I know that these were also on the Dropbox, some of them. But do you have any questions, comments?
Yeah, actually, Zach, if you could just fill me in the background on the waiver request there for regarding the parapet. What was the original intent for that part of the ordinance?
Yeah, so the parapet, that's under the building and streetscape design. So, I think Kelsey was speaking to, fall protection and some of the mechanical aspects that a parapet serves. But in a lot of instances for architecture within the city, it also serves an architectural purpose. So the intent was really to ensure, that there's providing something distinct, unique at the top of the building, and really just to try and build upon good architectural practices, and I think in this instance, the proposed design of the building, is different from a lot of what we see within the city, and I think, the applicants spoke to the number of ways that they're trying to meet a similar intent by using other architectural features and design choices in order to provide, design that has good, good design and is good for the streetscape as well.
Okay, that was my biggest thing. Thanks.
Yep.
Other comments? I have one that I just keep scratching my head about here, and that is that you are requesting a number of waivers, and although most of them are really part of this large project and a comprehensive that you've developed here, I just don't understand why you did not opt for basically doing a district plan for the area instead of using the zoning ordinance to the point where we're spending hours looking at all these requests and waivers when all of this could have been easily taken care of if you went, that route instead from the very beginning, and it would have probably taken a lot less time. And I know that you're up against deadlines here. So I just don't see the logic in the direction you went to begin with.
I'll just speak to that quickly. So the reason why we started this project pursuing a district plan application, and the reason why we withdrew that and went with the phase 1 development plan is because of the issue related to property ownership and not having full control over all of the properties that we had included in the district. And so based upon, so the two properties, as you know, 84 and 86 Second Avenue are still not under our control. And so by doing so, we were able to remove those and just focus on the first phase. And since we're planning on consolidating all of the properties anyway, most of the dimensional standards would apply as a whole anyway, as they would with a district plan.
Well, am I incorrect? I guess I'll address this to Zach, that a district plan could have been done excluding those two properties.
Yeah, you could do a district plan and then amend it later on to include those two properties. You know, I think,
Yeah.
you know, I think Al, as you had mentioned,
That's what
you know, there's a little bit of a time crunch that's been noted. So I think, you know, for some instances for applicants, it might make sense not to do that if you do have to go back and re-amend the district plan. You know, I'm not particularly sure why the applicant chose that. You know, and I think as Kelsey had mentioned, you know, there are a few dimensional standards that are waived with the district plan, and those are side setbacks and rear setbacks, but it is a unique property where, you know, most of this is speaking to front setbacks, just based on the layout of the site. So I think, as Kelsey had mentioned, there's some things that are just kind of unavoidable, you know, regardless of whether you're doing a district plan or not. And a lot of things that we had included in the letter are really just to make sure that we're addressing everything as fully as possible. Our department's going to be having an internal meeting to determine whether, you know, all of these things need to go through the waiver process and or potentially need maybe an interpretation from Commissioner Spencer along with a waiver. So we'll be providing more information, you know, to the board, to the applicant, to the public on that process as we move forward. But really, you know, I think a lot of these things are relatively minor. Again, it's just making sure that we're ensuring, you know, conformance with the USDO when we're reviewing this application and any other application.
Right. Any comments from the board? Other comments, questions? This doesn't relate specifically to the waivers that have been requested, but I wanted to ask the applicants, the letter that was sent to the board and the department from the minister for the church indicates that he will not grant an easement for construction access so that you can get to the site from that direction. How do you plan on dealing with that?
So in terms of the general construction, we would not need an easement from him. However, what we're actually proposing as part of the project.
Well, I meant to say an access.
We wouldn't need access. The only concern that we have is that we are proposing to the building that used to be directly adjacent to his property was demolished by the former owner. And when that occurred, the parking lot on the church property started to collapse. And so we are proposing to rebuild that with a retaining wall and actually pay to rebuild his parking lot. And so in order to do that, we would need an easement, but that's to benefit him.
Yeah. Okay.
But a follow-up question. So so the only reason you would need an easement is not to do any of the project for the 76. It would just be to build that wall for him. But wouldn't that wall benefit the 76 as well?
I mean, it's going to benefit everyone, but the problem is that the property is collapsing at the property line. So there's only one solution, and in order to implement the solution, we would need a retaining wall.
Right, but if he's not trying to give you an easement, how are you going to implement that solution?
I think there's going to have to be further conversations with him. I'm not sure that he fully understands
Okay.
what we're proposing along that property line.
Okay, thank you.
I also wanted to ask, in reference to the letter that was provided to respond to comments from the Water and Wastewater Division. Apparently, the wastewater treatment that you will be using on site, which is a great idea. The questions were raised in there about the oversight of the treatment plant and the operation and management of it. How's that going to be handled?
Ed, are you on the call?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize if my reception's poor. I'm unfortunately on the phone tonight. Yeah, so the wastewater treatment plant is going to be fully regulated by County Department of Health and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. So the project will need to have the right maintenance agreements in place. There will be oversight. The plant will be operated and maintained by the 76 development, a private entity. But like I said, it will be regulated by those other authorities, and there will be required annual oversight and reporting. So it will be a fully compliant and operational plant with, and we will be subject to the fines and criteria that any other wastewater treatment plant in New York State would be.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions before we move on? Okay,
And
so
we do have a public speaker. Just to. Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that there was a public speaker.
I'm sorry, yes, I forgot that we are doing that, even though this is specific to the interpretations and waivers. Okay.
All right, Jeff, you should be a panelist at this point, and you should be able to speak. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep. So feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak. And I apologize for some confusion. Is this the public hearing on the on this application yet, or you're just inviting public comment?
We're just inviting public comment right now.
Okay, that's great.
We're not making any decisions at all.
No, I understand that. I was just wondering if this was the formal public hearing is my only question.
For development plan review and demolition applications, they don't require a public hearing, but for public meetings, we allow public comment.
Great. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the time. I've submitted a letter to you raising our concerns. I represent the Dunbrooks and Wedemeyer at 84 and 86. One of the questions that I had, and we laid out there, is this project has changed. It's been a bait and switch. It was sold and presented as a 60% affordable housing project. It is now approximately a 20% affordable housing project. The whole genesis, the nature, the point of what this has been sold for, how the council approved it, has been changed. And I think that this board has to carefully consider that and look at requiring and finding out what is the mix of apartments and questioning giving the credits of any credits that they're looking at for a density on affordable housing if it does not represent what they originally represented to you. I think you need to look back at reopening this under seeker. The lead agency for this was the Common Council. They have completed their action on this by doing the rezoning. They have no further involvement in the project. it is appropriate to reestablish yourself and look at this and look at the various impacts associated with a project that does not have the same purported benefits that were being considered before by the Common Council. You won't be necessarily changing the rezoning, but you're applying the standards and the development plan review to look at whether that's being considered and look at under seeker. And as I think I've mentioned before, is Mr. Spencer represented to the council that this board would be looking at impacts such as construction-related impacts and shadow impacts, which were never considered at all by the council, to look at what's going to happen by building these, and especially the impacts on my client's property. And to point out is that my clients, there have been very limited discussions about a buyout from SCD of my clients, and they don't want to leave. They like this area and they are willing to stay. And so the project needs to be designed to accommodate their needs. And I've laid out in my letter 3 basic things that the board should consider for mitigation. A 10-foot wall surrounding their properties, making sure that the loading dock at the northern end of building B is buried or fully enclosed. And as the bishop has required for his church, a pre-construction, post-construction survey of potential damage and a surety bond should be created to protect their interests. And I like having this timer, and thank you very much for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. Do the applicants have a response? The applicants get a time to respond after public comments, or are there other public comments, Zach?
No one else has signed up to speak. So I think based on the rules of the procedure, it's 5 minutes.
Yes. Do the applicants have any clarifications or comments?
I think the clarification is probably, we have no idea where Jeff is getting his information because nothing has changed in the project to affect the affordability unless I've been completely out of the loop and asleep for the last month or two. Kels? I mean,
yeah, I think so. Where his comment is stemming from is the affordable housing compliance plan that was submitted for the project. And in that application, we did indicate 20% affordability in order to hit the affordable housing incentive that is required for the development. But what I will say is that the applicant is 100%, their goal is to hit 60%. But this is an extremely complex project that is not going to be cheap in any way because of all of the sustainability components. And so we are working diligently to work with various financing entities so that we can hit 60%. That is the goal. We don't want to hit less than that. And just today, we received word from the International Living Future Institute that runs the Living Building Challenge that our project has been accepted into the affordable housing pilot project, which is extremely competitive. And by being entered into that pilot program, it offers tremendous ability for us to be able to hit that 60%, and that's our ultimate goal.
Yeah, Kelsey, and just to elaborate on that, I'm glad you mentioned that. The application that was submitted lists 20% minimum because that's the threshold that's required for us to take advantage of the incentives in your code. So we established that as a baseline. But like Kelsey said, we intend to go above and beyond that. And today's announcement from ILFI actually is one of the major steps that we need to achieve that. So we're working towards that. And to respond to the last couple comments that Mr. Baker said, as we've stated early on in this process, our design team has worked on projects in big cities. We've worked on extensive and very challenging sheeting and shoring plans to protect neighboring properties, to protect the adjacent properties, to perform assessments of those properties before and after construction, especially with the type of project we're proposing. That's a baseline, and we would certainly agree to those criteria to ensure that any property owner, whether it's his clients or other adjacent properties like the church or neighbors across the street, feel that as this project, this very exciting project gets underway, that their interests are protected. So I appreciate him bringing up those points, and we certainly do not take exception to those items. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And so I'll just put the I just sent this to the panelists, but I'll just put the link in for that organization they just were speaking to, ILFI, in the chat box if anyone wants to visit that website to learn more about what that organization does. Were there any other questions from the board or?
Okay. This ends the public meeting part of the planning board meeting, and we move now on to our public hearings. And you wanted to get rid of the timer?
Yes, sorry, bear with me. I'm just trying to transition applicants and give me just 1 second. I will be moving some people around. Okay. And let me change the share back to the PowerPoint. Thanks for your patience.
Okay. Our first project under the public hearing is for the development of a Stewart shop on Washington and Colvin Avenues. This is a mixed-use neighborhood center zone district. The request is a conditional use permit for the occupation of approximately 4,000 square foot convenience store and vehicle filling station. Now, this project certainly is not foreign to us. We have seen an iteration of this project at least 4 or 5 times in the past, in both public meetings and in our workshops. However, this is considered a new application because the applicants have done some reconfiguration, and as a result, it is being presented to us as a different project. So with that, we can proceed.
Okay, so Tyler and Jim, I think you're able to, unmute. And so just let me know when you're ready and I'll start the 10-minute timer for the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Zach. This is Jim Gillespie. We're ready to go.
Okay, feel free to start.
All right, thanks everybody. Really appreciate this opportunity. Very happy to be back before the board and take another look at the project. We've done quite a bit of work on it. We've redesigned the lot. We've redesigned the building. We've made some modifications to the canopy. So we're very happy to be here and have the opportunity to present the plan. We do believe, this plan will meet what the city is looking for. So I can just go through some of the, if you pull up that site plan, Zach, I'll just summarize some of the changes. So one of the biggest changes here is the position and layout of the building. We've moved that building as close to the corner as possible. Our goal here was to provide a more pedestrian friendly and oriented building. And I think we've done that by, we've put the main entrance facing the main street, Washington Ave. And the facade, the main facade, the long portion of the building is facing Washington Ave. We've provided 3 access points from the sidewalks on Washington and Colvin.
Yeah, we're
And
starting to.
the goal here is to, again, provide as much pedestrian-oriented accommodations as we can here to service the neighborhood. So some of those items include, many seating areas have been provided. Again, that whole entire storefront is a porch, covered porch with many seating areas to be able to sit along Washington Ave, as well as covered porches on the east and west side, which can provide some additional seating. Again, there's these areas provide a place for people to rest, enjoy a beverage, ice cream, or any one of our snacks or food offerings. We've also provided an additional seating area on Colvin with a stamped concrete patio and some benches. Another modification we've done to the plan is we've revised the Washington Ave access to restrict some turning movements. It's important to also note that we will still be providing the MyoVision traffic monitoring and control system to further maximize the efficiency of that signal system and improve traffic flow. This was something that was very important to the city engineer, Mr. Trudeau, and we will still be providing that. We've reduced parking along the western property line, and we've moved those spaces further from the street to provide a little more green space along the street frontage. We've reduced the size and number of pumps in the fuel canopy. We've removed that interconnect to the northern property line, which will also provide some additional green space. We are proposing a dedication of land along the western property line, 5-foot dedication of land. I did notice during the workshop, there was a question why we did not provide additional landscaping on that side of the fence. That is something we are certainly willing to do. This will give the neighbors an opportunity to own that landscaping instead of just having a white vinyl fence. They'll have the fence buffer, and they'll have an opportunity to have some additional landscaping on their side of the property to break up that fence and to increase the buffer. And they can certainly chime in on the type of landscaping they would like to see there, whether it be evergreens or a combination of trees and shrubbery. So that, I think, was a little better option for them, and hopefully was appealing to them, or will be. And then the building facade itself is we believe it's much more has a much more residential feel. It's very unique to Stewart's. There's only one other location that we've constructed this building. It has many additional unique architectural features. It's got a cupola, dormers, columns with decorative brackets, accent trim throughout, stone veneer. It's got scalloped siding on the dormers and gable ends. It's really a very good, very residential and very friendly atmosphere, and really accommodates, with that full porch frontage. It's just a very inviting area to gather and to, unfortunately, social distancing is in effect now, but hopefully someday it won't be. And certainly Stewart's is always traditionally been a place for neighbors to come and gather and enjoy a beverage or a meal, and and socialize and watch, and just enjoy the neighborhood and the street frontage. So this layout and this building are certainly going to promote that, and we're very happy to have made this change, and we think it's going to be very well received, we're hoping. So again, those pedestrian accommodations include that stamped concrete patio and benches. I think we provided some pictures, some examples of some stamped concrete patios, the benches, the seating areas. We've got, a bike rack on that Washington Ave frontage. And again, just trying to really focus on making this a friendly and pedestrian, accommodations to invite the neighbors to enjoy the facility. The landscaping, again, we've worked with the city forester, and we're going to continue to focus on that street frontage and the buffer along the western property line. We've got a variety of evergreen and deciduous trees and shrubs throughout, again, focusing on that street frontage, and providing some shade and some aesthetically pleasing street frontage for the pedestrians and some of those seating areas. So we've also provided a large planter on the north side of the building to add some color and interest along that pedestrian access way from Colvin. And I think that kind of summarizes the changes. We're certainly hoping they're well received, and we're hoping to move forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And here we see a compendium of all of the proposed modifications from the previous plan. Board members, any questions, comments?
Yeah, I do for the developer. So I will be honest, I understand that you guys made some extensive improvements to the what you originally submitted to us. And I know that what was originally submitted was denied. But here's where my hangup is. With all the improvements, the purpose of your development plan is to be a gas station / convenience store. And USDO specifically says that we can't really, as a board, the application should not be looked at or approved if you're proposing the same or similar development on all or part of the same land within 1 year of the denial. So my question is regarding the term similar development. I understand that you are developing the property differently as far as configuration, but how does this not meet the similar development when your purpose is still the same, which is to be a gas station / convenience store?
Well, I would like to at least, in our mind, this is not a gas station / convenience store. This is a convenience store with an accessory gas station use. And we further emphasize that with the substantial change in the design of the building and the site. Again, by reducing that number of fuel dispensers, we certainly support the fact that this is a convenience store. It does have an accessory fuel service to it, but it is, and I do want to point out, this convenience store is an allowed use in the zone. So that's an important piece to point out. And I think, this plan is very much different, and that's where we're coming from. It is not just a modification. In our mind, this is a completely different plan for us to have to have that main entrance, facing the street, is something that is not something that we normally do. It is a change for us, but it is something that we realize is important to the city, and it is important to support that neighborhood and pedestrian atmosphere and feel and services. And that's what we did, and that's our feeling on it. So
I'd like to take that one step further to further understand what you're saying here. The original plan, how many pumps were there in the original plan?
There were 4 pumps. So we did, we did reduce
4
that.
pumps or 4 stations? When I say pumps, I'm talking about how many cars can be accommodated. I guess 2 per pump, right?
Oh, yes. So there's 4 dispensers, so that's 8 fueling positions.
And how many do you have now?
Well, there's 3
proposed?
dispensers, so that's 6 fuelings. So that's-
Okay, and so you're saying that reducing the number of gasoline pumps from 8 to 6 somehow makes them more of an accessory use to the convenience of the sales within the store.
Well, I think it's always an accessory use to us, but this would further support that. Yes, by reducing that number. Yep, that's how.
So by you saying that, I'm just going to follow up on what you just said, that that's always been your intention to be an accessory use. So again, what I'm hearing is going from 8 to 6 doesn't negate the intention, you're just reducing the pumps. So I have to go back to my question is, if you have gas pumps there, you're using it as a gas station. If you have a convenience stores there, you're using it as a convenience store. Whether you emphasize the convenience store first and accessory as gas, or gas station as convenience store, those purposes are still the same. You still have those same 2 type of buildings. So that's the part where I need you to get over for me, because if you change it to say we're eliminating the gas totally, we're just having a convenience store, then I can get on board. But if you're, or vice versa, then I can get on board. But you're still having the same 2 purposes there on the same property, just configured differently. So you have to help me get over what the language of our USDO says for the purpose to be not be similar. I understand it's not the same because you are changing the dynamics. However, the similarity part, because it says same or similar, the use is still the same, regardless of whether or not you reduce your pump and increase the convenience store. You still have the same uses. So you got to get over that for me.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's move.
I don't want to. We can't change what the uses are, but in our mind, this is not a similar plan. This is not a similar application. This is a completely different application because of the vast, in our minds, the vast changes that have happened to the plan. And again, fuel portion of the project is not just important to just the Stewart's Corporation. I mean, this is important to the partners that work there, and those partners are typically going to be, residents of the city of Albany and possibly neighbors, probably neighbors. That those sales are, part of their salary. So I mean, it's not just a corporate thing. It benefits those new jobs and those residents.
Okay, we understand that. I mean, that's not in our purview, the jobs and all of that. We need to look at the plan. So I do want to move on to other questions regarding this.
Oh, this is Chris. Can I just weigh in real quick on that?
On what?
On whether it's the same application, and just point out that in the USDO, it's really talking about whether it's the same or essentially the same approval. It's not really talking about the same or the same use. So I think, again, the USDO was trying to make sure that people weren't constantly coming back with the same thing. So I think it was.
I have to respectfully disagree, Chris, because it says the same or similar development. So they're developing. They're still developing a gas station. They're still developing a convenience store. Whether they reduce the number of pumps or increase or reduce the size of the whatchamacallit, the convenience store, it's still the same things being developed on that land. And that's the language that the USDO says, and he has to get over. So I have to disagree with you because it's the same development.
I understand. It doesn't say development, it does say the same approval. So
nope. What I have in my version says development. I read it verbatim. It says development.
I'm reading a different section than under successive applications.
I am under, and Zach helped me find it earlier. Zach, can you help me again, please? Because I closed my USDO. 'cause I
Yeah,
thought-
so this is on page 231 of the
Yeah,
USDO.
my 231 is different. So you gave me the section. I know
Yep.
it's 375-5. Is it 12?
D12, it's on the same page as 13 though, and it's right above 13.
Okay, give me one moment. So that means that I may have the wrong USDO, but I'm going to read it verbatim. It says under limitation of subsequent similar applications, under 2, prior application denial. If an application requiring a public hearing is denied, no application proposing the same or similar development on all or part of the same land shall be submitted within 1 year after the date of the denial. That's the version that I have. And that's what it says.
That's what I have as well.
Okay, so I think what we have here is two different sections that are saying slightly different things, so.
So then that's an issue with the USDO that needs to be rectified. However, I'm still with my same argument.
Sure, I understand. So there are two sections that are saying this in different ways, so that's probably where that conflict is coming from, so.
Just for future reference, Chris, can you cite the section that you were looking at?
Here, it's 375-5D5, and then it's it's I. So it's under
Okay,
successive.
Okay, thank you. That's great. We'll take a look at that. Other questions, issues to bring up?
Well, the thing that I still wonder about is the pedestrian nature. I mean, that's we've talked about how this type of zone or this zone aims at neighborhood serving, pedestrian-oriented uses, and I think that that this development is it's primarily 90% of the land is devoted to those uses. I mean, the building only takes up 10%. So I think, and that's pretty much the same as last time as well. And I have, trouble accepting that something with that much asphalt is really pedestrian oriented when most of that does go to the gas station, parking and maneuvering of large fuel trucks, which we've been told is a major aspect to why that's so large. That's the way it's laid out. So, and I think that, and that's a lot more the play. I did a few calculations on some other gas stations. This one is particularly large. It's at least 2 and sometimes 3 times bigger than other gas stations, in the city. So I guess because my question, if I had a question, it would be why does the parking lot need to be so much larger than fueling stations around? There we go. There's the examples I pulled out, plus one urban gas station from Savannah that Zach is showing now.
Yeah, and sorry about that, Martin. And I think to the board too, some members had submitted comments ahead of time, so I don't know if now's the appropriate time or if we want to finish with questions to the applicant and then proceed to that. So
I think we should continue with questions to the applicant, and then we can go through both the planning department and board's commentary after that, as well as getting public comment.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Yep, thank you, Al.
So any questions more to the applicant from the planning board?
I don't have any questions to the applicant, Al, but I think
actually,
if we have conflicting statements inside of the USDO, I think it might be in our interest to resolve that before we address the project.
I don't think so, because the project, all that is doing is indicating whether the project should have been a new project or should have been a continuing project, therefore not being able to look at it for a year. But I think we're looking right now at a plan, and I don't see any reason why we can't proceed with looking at this as a plan that's being presented. So.
Okay.
Anything else?
Question for the applicant. There's discussion about whether this is primarily auto related or not. Maybe you can address that by when you did your feasibility study, how much pedestrian traffic were you anticipated versus customers that are coming by vehicles, et cetera. And maybe a percentage of your estimate for inside versus outside sales. I don't know if you have those numbers, at least rough numbers available. You probably got a ballpark idea.
Tyler might know a little bit more about that. I don't know. Tyler, are you on the call?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
No.
Hello?
I hear you.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So in terms of, I have some of the figures, Roman, that you requested. I don't have all of them. I can get those for you and get back to you. Roughly about 75% of people that come to our site only occupy this convenience store portion of it, and about 25% go for gas only for this development. That's a rough ballpark. Looking at some other alternative sites, similar demographic, similar layouts. So that's the best I have for numbers right now. If there's some specific details you would like, I will get those to you. I just need to know exactly what you're looking for.
Well, I think if those figures move forward, I think Roman was looking more for gross sales and not necessarily how many feet go in the store versus how many feet stay in the car.
Well, again, if the argument, if like Alf, the question is, whether it's predominantly auto related or not. If most of your traffic is pedestrian, that's a key issue there. If it's from the neighborhood, then that could reduce the argument. But just saying 75% for the C-store sales versus 25% gas sales, doesn't tell me are 80% of the people for the C-store driving the car there to get to the C-store. So it doesn't really address the concerns about being in compliance with conflicting use there.
Yeah, in other words, you're wondering how many people will walk in without using vehicles versus how many people will drive in.
Right. The concern I had, with the USDO, I had the two concerns. One was, I think the USDO says, if it's predominantly for non-auto related, and if 90% of my customers are driving to the site, well, then it's auto related. So that kind of puts a kibosh on that. And then my other concern was, of course, the compliance with the character of the neighborhood along Washington Ave. I think, redesigning the structure of the C-store and how it fronts on the Washington Ave is a big boost there. That I'm happy with. I guess my concern still remains with the balance of Washington Avenue. If I'm cruising on Washington Avenue, I can still crank my head to the left. If I'm heading into the city, I can still crank my head to the left and see the fuel canopy and whatnot. So those are just my thoughts and something that's still sitting on my mind.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one more comment?
All right.
I guess another comment for this is time of year and weather. Again, if it was sunny year round and the weather was nice, I think that's another component that needs to be looked at with consideration based on the comments made. I'm less likely if it's snowing out, really cold, I'd rather, drive over to the site if I live in the neighborhood right next door versus walking. But again, I think it depends on the time of year as well.
Okay. Further comments? Okay, I think our next step then would be to hear from the public concerning this project.
All right, okay. This is Chris one more time. I just wanted to point out the introduction to the neighborhood mixed-use neighborhood center. And I think we're, in a lot of cases, I don't want to get hung up not just on this particular project, but in general of sort of misreading it. And it really talks about the purpose of the MUNC district. And they're talking about this is talking about the district as a whole, not just every individual use taken in isolation. But the purpose is to provide for this mix of residential options, local retail and small scale commercial uses, providing support services to the neighborhood. So again, that's talking about the overall district, creating this mix. And then it talks about the primary, not all of the uses, but the primary land uses shall include a variety of predominantly non-auto destination retail. So again, this is predominantly, so it doesn't mean all of them, and it doesn't mean that in MUNC you couldn't have a use that is auto-oriented. But in this particular case, we're talking about one use within the district that still is, I think, predominantly non-destination, non-auto oriented. So I think
that these, Chris, I'm concerned that you're discussing this now because it's in the staff report that we're going to see on the screen anyway.
Yeah, no, I just want to point it out because I think it's easy to get caught up and think of this as just that the USDL is saying that no use can have an auto-oriented or even an auto-oriented portion of it. So that's all. I just wanted to point that out. So I'll stop my comment.
Mm-hmm. I think I definitely see that, but I think there's also, there's a difference between, different kinds of auto-oriented uses. There's a little tiny gas station in Savannah versus, let's say a Walmart. If you only have one Walmart in a pedestrian-oriented district, is predominantly. I think we have to agree that the smaller and more easily the urban design of the auto-oriented structure fits into the better it is for that for the integrity of that zone.
Okay, let us go to the public part of the meeting and public comment. Do we have any?
Yes, we do. I'm just there were some people that said they might not be able to make it, so I'm just trying to assess who's here, who's not here. So we have 4 public speakers. Bear with me while I just pull that first person from the list. Okay, and then I will switch to the timer. Paul, are you there?
I'm here.
Yep, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much. I'm Paul Lamar. I live at 143 Rosemont Street. At the Planning Board workshop on October 15th, we shared what appeared to be Mr. DeSalvo's dismay at seeing Stewart's proposal for a hypermart at the corner of Colvin and Washington Avenues. Stewart's is either disingenuous or cynical about the application process. Its difference from the August application is negligible. We find it remarkable that Stewart's has been permitted to take up our time again, but we will respond. In the first place, the size of the project's footprint remains the same. This fact alone makes the current proposal nearly identical to the original and thus worthy of denial. But what isn't identical? 2 parking spaces have been removed. 2 gas pumps have been removed. The curb cut on Washington Avenue has been tweaked. Stewart's has offered to give each of the neighbors who will be impacted 5 feet of space to do with as we will to create a buffer between our properties and the hypermart. Thanks, but no thanks. How about the building itself? The building's design was never an issue, but it seems that Stewart's is suggesting that alterations in style and placement change the acceptability of the project. They do not. You put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. The Planning Board rejected the original plan in August because the entire project did not fit the character of the neighborhood in fundamental ways that the board and we and many neighbors pointed out. This current proposal is not different and clearly does not fit the residential character of the neighborhood, a neighborhood already served by other food stores and gas stations. Traffic, noise, the destruction of affordable housing, the effect on property values, the loss of trees, the threat to the environment, the availability of 12 other stewards' shops within 5 miles, the undeniable autocentric nature of this huge project. These arguments that were persuasive in August are persuasive in October. Finally, this discussion may be moot when the planning board hears in November Councilperson Mike O'Brien's ordinance that would correct the mistake the Common Council made when it improperly zoned the 2 houses on Washington Avenue as part of the mixed-use arrangement. Mr. O'Brien has stated that the Common Council failed to observe on the map that the 2 houses were wrongly involved in the changes. Once these 2 occupied houses are properly declared residential, the discussion of a Stewart's Hypermart on this site should come to an end once and for all. Thanks very much.
Sorry about that. One of the speakers that are originally signed up who wasn't there when I had looked has appeared, so we actually have 4 more speakers. So bear with me just for 1 second while I get the next speaker. Sarah, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Harrington, and I reside at 141 Rosemont, which is on the corner of Rosemont and Washington. And I don't have a lot to say that hasn't been said before because, as you know, we've already done this. I believe that the provision in the USDO that bars applications proposing the same or similar development within 1 year should control and serve as a basis for denying the application. I want to highlight that the board communicated several concerns regarding the original proposal to the applicant back in May 2020. And instead of attempting to modify its proposal at that time, Stewart's wrote a letter in July essentially arguing that the board's concerns were not valid. Accordingly, the application was denied in August. The new site plan is really the applicant trying to get another bite at the apple after it squandered the opportunity given by the board. Given the board's clear communications to the applicant in May, it cannot be argued that this new application is in any way based on some new information or revelation about the problems with the original plan. In any event, the new site plan is not sufficiently dissimilar from the denied plan, and it also fails to resolve the basis for the board's denial of the original plan. That is, the plan still fails to meet the 4th criteria for conditional use permit because it is not consistent with the purposes of the neighborhood center district or with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. And unlike Mr. Gillespie's characterization, this is not an allowed use in this zone, it is a conditional use. And this issue about primarily the use being primarily non-auto oriented, we already discussed this in August, so I'll refer to my comments at that meeting. As to the purported changes cited in the staff memo and today at the meeting, the buffer and the changes in the entrances and egresses to the property are not relevant to achieving consistency with the district or the neighborhood, and they raise other issues that are noted in my written comments. The facade change is beside the point since the real issues with the original plan blending with the neighborhood related to the scope and scale of the project, not the aesthetics. The removal of 1 gas pump is not enough to make this proposed gas station non-auto oriented. And the purported change in the orientation of the building leaves the pedestrian entrances facing the same directions they did before. The building still has no pedestrian entrance on Colvin, which is the mixed-use corridor here. Further, as some members of the board acknowledge, the attempts to make accommodations for pedestrians with nice picnic tables and the like are moot when considered in light of the overall plan. I just want to say that the fact that this matter is being brought up again is so frustrating. If permitted to go forward, it raises so many issues with this process, not the least of which is the lack of accountability to the applicant for failing to present an appropriate plan in the first instance, despite clear communication from the board. Further, I think I speak for many of us members of the community when I say this process is emotionally draining. And if we need to be on constant defense of our properties, then this process threatens our very ability to enjoy our properties and our neighborhood. So I just want to thank the board for its continued thoughtful consideration of this matter and request that the conditional use application be denied. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington.
Sorry, I'm just, again, pulling from the list. Okay. Hyde, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Hyde, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep. Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Hyde Clark. I'm the president of the Upper Washington Avenue Neighborhood Association. I live at 39 Van Buren Street. I'm not going to take the full time that's allotted, but I do want to reiterate that it's my position that the conditional use permit should be denied. I agree with Sarah that this is substantially the same application and that the USDO does not permit this application to be heard at this time. In addition, the main reason that the conditional use was denied in the first instance is that it doesn't fit in the character of the neighborhood. And that issue to me is not a Stewart's issue. It's a land use issue. As noted, Councilman Mike O'Brien does have legislation that would rezone the properties to the proper zoning classification of R2. There's a existing residential home next to the existing gas station on Colvin and Washington across the street. That's properly zoned R2. It's clearly a mistake. I did provide to the planning board a copy of a petition that I circulated on behalf of the neighbors to petition the council to make this zone change. And I know that council at the planning board at this point has to consider the zoning that's in place at the time of the application. However, the reason for the rezone again is that it doesn't fit in the character of the neighborhood. And I think it is a shame that the neighbors continue to have to be put on defense when it's really a land use issue that the council needs to address and fix and make sure that this is R2. I think a lot of people in the Upper Washington Avenue Neighborhood Association would like to see that key bank used. I don't think anyone's arguing against that. It's always been the size and scope, the demolition of these residential buildings that's been an issue, and the degradation of that boundary between our neighbors on Rosemont and the proposed Stewarts. So I think once that zone change goes through, that hopefully the planning board can concentrate on applications that come before it that are just for the key bank. That certainly needs to hopefully be reused. I think it's a great building in its current form. So appreciate the planning board's time tonight and ask you that you deny the conditional use permit on this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shamalia, are you there?
Yes.
All right, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. My name is Shumaila Qureshi, and I am the co-owner of the property at the gas station. And I couldn't agree more with my fellow members that put the motion for the denial of the tourist project. And I am requesting the board of the members that to deny the motion because it is highly inconsistent with the USDO section 3755E 16 review standards. And the main thing that I want to highlight here, it is the review standard says that it would not cause negative fiscal or environmental impacts on adjacent properties and the surrounding neighborhoods. And also another section says it will provide a necessary and desirable service that is in the interest of the public convenience and will contribute to the general welfare of the surrounding neighborhood or community. I don't think so. The Stewart is bringing anything new, and this is the similar project, just with the few additions and subtractions of their pumps and green belt. I would like to ask the chairman to deny the motion, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Julie, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yep. Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Great. Julie Lundgren at 51 Winthrop Ave. And tonight I am speaking on behalf of Historic Albany Foundation. I am a board member of that foundation, and these comments on behalf of the staff and the board. Historic Albany Foundation believes the new application does not address the previous concerns by the community or the planning board, which initially caused the planning board to deny the project. The project still involves the demolition of 2 occupied sound residential structures on a residential corridor and the demolition of a structurally sound commercial building, has been noted by the residents. In a city plagued with vacancy, frequent emergency demolitions of structurally unsound vacant buildings that create pockets of developable land through the city, the proposed demolition of sound and perfectly usable structures sets a poor planning precedent, adds needlessly to the landfill, and perpetuates a disposable culture which has no place in a city striving to be sustainable. In addition, the project is not consistent with the USDO. It would certainly cause negative fiscal and environmental impacts on adjacent properties, as well as those across Colvin and Washington Avenue. There would be not any additional services that are not already available across the street or close by. So we encourage the planning board to uphold their denial of the initial project and to deny this new application. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Lundgren, a question for you. Does the Historic Albany Foundation, does it have a letter that has been or will be submitted to the board for the record?
Yes, they have submitted a letter. Kara Macri submitted a letter today. I can send another copy if you'd like.
No, if she submitted it, it will be then in the planning department's records and we'll be able to get it.
Hey, Al, just for my knowledge, are any of the 3 buildings, the 2 residential and the current key bank, considered to have architectural, historic, or civic relevance?
Well, civic, I would guess, would be the one that they don't have historical, they're not historic in nature. They're not designated as historic properties.
Okay.
Other speakers, Zach?
There's no other speakers on the list. There was a participant who put their name in the chat but did not specify if they wanted to speak or not. So if there's anyone else that would like to speak, please send a message stating that now with your name and address. I'll give this a few seconds just to make sure.
Okay. I believe the next step would be for us to review the planning department's proposal and the comments by the planning board members themselves as they looked at the plan again and submitted comments.
Yeah, so I'm not seeing anyone
okay,
submitting that they want to speak. So
let's move on then to those. Does everybody have their screen share up? You're making me hungry.
Yes.
I haven't had any dinner yet. You keep popping those up, every once in a while.
Sorry about that. I'm hungry as well, so I sympathize and empathize. Chris just had asked me to put up the these review standards before he talks through them tonight for the application. but just for, the planning board's knowledge, the comments that were submitted by the planning board members ahead of time, they've been compiled into slides that go along with each of the review standards. So all of the information that we've received from the board is in the presentation. So board members, you don't have to provide anything or present unless you would like to. But just wanted to give that as a heads up.
With the planning board's comments in reference to the conditional use requirements, are they going to be at the end of the presentation by the staff, or are they integrated within the presentation under each item, 1 through 7?
So what I did is I just separated it. So,
Okay.
The comments that were submitted, the memo that was submitted, built from a previous memo submitted by Commissioner Spencer. So a lot of the review and materials have been provided to the board already. So I think the primary function was to, give an opportunity for Chris to speak to any of the comments made during the meeting and how they relate to the review standards. And then on the slide following, it'll then go through each of the board members who have submitted their comments, just so that all the board members are able to view the comments. And then if you were a board member that submitted comments but would like to make an addition, you can do that. Or if you're a board member that did not submit comments ahead of time, you can add on to those comments, or maybe provide a different comment based on that review standard.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Let's go.
All right, so you guys, I think the board has the memo from before, and I'm not going to read those in particular, but I think that in general, we talked about the project being consistent with the provisions of the USDO and Albany Code. It is oriented, again, more towards Washington Avenue, but it is meeting all of the setbacks, the landscaping. It probably would require some zoning relief for parking in excess and an additional curb cut. So those are things that, any project often needs, just as we saw with the 76, there is often either need for a waiver, modifications, or some form of zoning relief. It doesn't mean that it's not completely consistent with, or not at all inconsistent with the USDO. So I think the project would not result in the random pattern of development with little relationship to the existing or planned development. Again, in this particular case, the entire project was changed to be more consistent with the residential development along Western Avenue, and creating more of a pedestrian entrance on that front, really, to make sure it was connecting with the residential development around it, where it was going to be drawing customer base from. So again, that it's not random. It is consistent with the overall. Many of the residential properties along Western Avenue have a long access along Western Avenue. Many of them have porches, low sloping roofs, dormers, some of those kinds of things. So in general, I think it's consistent with that. The project would not cause a negative fiscal or environmental impact on the adjacent properties in the surrounding neighborhood. I think in the previous I provided a number of other areas throughout the Capital District where Stewart's are located, and there are other existing and successful gas station or convenience stores, either adjacent, across the street, or right nearby. The project is consistent with the purposes and objectives of the zone district and the character of the neighborhood in which it is located, and the specific use standards applicable to the use. I think, again, it is a part of the primary use within the district, being one, retail, being small scale. And again, we're talking about not a preponderance or not a primary use, but again, part of the overall mix within the district. The project would not result in cumulative effects or harmful cumulative effects or harmful impacts of aggregate similar conditional uses. I think it is structured and much different than the other gas station in that the pumps are not at the front, the parking is not at the front, that the building is really at the corner, which was one of the things that we pushed for very hard with the USDO to make sure that projects like this would engage the street corner, would engage the street, and would help sort of define those areas. So I think it is dissimilar to another existing conditional or something that would be a conditional use if it was coming through today. Project would not place an excessive burden on the public improvements, facilities or service or utilities. Again, it would meet all of the stormwater regulations, reduce the runoff over what is currently coming off the site. So it is an improvement in terms of that. I think the traffic mitigation that they were proposing that would extend beyond the project and would actually improve the traffic in the area. These are generally based on neighborhood and capturing some of the drive-by traffic. They're not a destination, so they don't usually are not generators of traffic. So I think in that term, it's consistent with number 6. Project will provide a necessary and desirable service that is in the interest of the public convenience and will contribute to the general welfare of the surrounding neighborhood or community. I think in general, the mix of items and services that are contained within the Stewarts are an expansion, I think, of what the other use nearby has. I think they have a number of different things that they have in terms of their overall food items, household items, and things like that, that I think would add to the general welfare of the community. Again, allowing people more options within a walking distance that would allow them to less car trips to the grocery store for some of those incidentals. So that's comments on those 7 criteria.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Shall we move on?
Yeah, sorry about that. Al, Martin, and Roman, I got comments ahead of time from you, and I think based on the discussion last time with the conditional use permit, just wanting to make sure that all the board members have time to voice their opinions on all of the 7 review criteria, just to make sure that anything that the applicant can address ahead of time, they can do that, and making sure that all questions and concerns are brought to the table when reviewing the application. So under the first one, with the consistency of the USDO and city code provisions, and actually before I start, I'll leave this to the board members. If you would like to present your comments, or if you'd like me to present them, I'm fine to do that. But if you feel like you'd be better suited, feel free to jump in.
You can go through mine.
Martin and Roman, are you good with that as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, rock on. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
This is Lisa. I stated mine as we started this process, and I still reiterate the fact that we shouldn't even be entertaining this application because it goes against the USDO. So that's my only comment on this.
Okay. Thank you, Glenisa, for doing that. And thank you for providing that. And that does kind of align with the first review standard with consistency with the USDO and city code provisions. Al, you put in that the purpose of the district is to provide for a mixture of residential options, emphasis on local retail and emphasis on small scale commercial uses, providing support services for the surrounding residential neighborhoods, and include a variety of predominantly non-destination and emphasis on non-auto oriented retail and commercial establishments. You go on to say that the proposed project is neither local nor small scale, and it would sit on a very large lot that serves mostly a commuter and non-local clientele. Going on, you state that it's hardly a non-auto oriented use, as its primary purpose would be to attract vehicles for the main purpose of purchasing fuel. Martin, you had provided, and you had mentioned this earlier, you'd provided a comparison of the site along with 2 existing Albany locations, as well as 1 in Savannah, Georgia. Based on those comments, they seem to relate to this, but I'll go through those more in depth for the 4th review standard. And then Roman, you stated that while there's a reduction in the number of dispensers and a smaller canopy size, this is indicating that the applicant's wanting to comply with the code, but it's still unclear whether they anticipate the inside versus outside sales, or what they anticipate for those sales. And then on a related note, you said that it was unclear how much local pedestrian traffic is anticipated versus vehicular traffic. So we've heard from Al, Martin, Roman, and Glenisa on this. Chris, do you have any additional comments you want to add?
Sure. I probably am fundamentally disappointed with our overall approach to looking at things like this at times. Sometimes when we're just focused on very specific text, I think we miss very useful context. A little disappointed that we didn't get more of a conversation could just happen a lot differently when we talk about this stuff. And being able to talk about the development of an entire neighborhood in the city versus really just focused in on a particular project. I will have to, in this case, agree with my colleague, Glenissa, in that we probably shouldn't have even been looking at it at this point. But if we're talking about the substance of the plan and the project, I think about, it's personal for me when I think about Stewart's. And we're talking about neighborhood and traffic and cars. Every day I probably, after school, picked my son up from school, stopped at a Stewart's 2 blocks from my house. He liked milkshakes, so I would get him one. That's as neighborhood as you can get. If I had a bike and I need to put air in my tire, I would go to the free air pump at Stewart's. That's as neighborhood as you can get. So I think, there's some ways in which we could broaden this conversation to really looking at that context. And we just didn't do that as applicants in this case. And I just think this is disappointing. And we'll make our decision based off of the criteria that as planning board members we're supposed to make. But there's just some aspects of this that I just generally feel differently about than others, maybe.
So it sounds like some of your comments may relate to the first review standard, but maybe even more related to the purpose of the district, with it being mixed use neighborhood center.
The purpose of this, we'll stick to the fact that we're well within our year time frame when we're supposed to reassess a project, and I feel that it's very similar.
Okay.
Zach, are we going to see the table that I understand was developed by Martin in terms of what he was? Is that under review standard IV?
Yes, that's the 4th review standard. Okay. I'll get to that in just a second. For the second review standard with the relationship to existing development, Al, you had stated that it results in a pattern of development that's inconsistent with the existing development, which is almost entirely residential with some small offices or home offices on both sides of Washington Avenue, from Main Avenue to Germain Street, with the only exception being the Sunoco station across the street. And then Martin and Roman you had kind of referred to the review standard IV or 4 for this. Did any of the three of you want to add to that, or Glenisa and Chris? Glenisa, I know you and Chris, you kind of had stated that your review was kind of looking at this first review standard, but feel free to jump in and add in if there's something else that you want to add to the discussion as well.
They don't know what to do.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I appreciate that. This isn't anything about Stewart's. I agree with Chris's analysis. The fact that Stewart's is a neighborhood type of store, and the things that they've committed to our community. My issue is just purely procedural, and so I understand that there's been subsequent and substantial changes to the plan. However, the purpose of it, which it goes by the word development in the USDO, how they're planning to develop the property really hasn't changed. The way that it's configured has, but what the purpose for has not been changed, which is why I'm very adamant saying that the USDO does not really give us the permission to continue with this analysis based on that. And if they, like I said, if they wanted to do, Stewart's want to do purely convenience store, I can definitely hear that argument. They want to do purely gas station, I can totally hear that argument. But they're just changing, reconfiguring what the original purpose was without negating that purpose. So I just don't think that this application is something that we really should be entertaining at this time.
Okay.
Hey, can we have Amy opine on this, since we, I agree with what Glenn is saying, and I understand there's conflicting verbiage within USDO. And I'd like to get Amy's opinion about, do we err more on the one where it says, development versus the other, and should we not be having this discussion at this time for another year just in compliance?
So I was looking at the same provision that Glenessa mentioned that does state development, I believe, when I went through this issue. I looked at a bunch of different cases that deal with similar kind of situations where you have a subsequent application. And, my feeling is that when there's a substantial or material change, an application can be considered a new application. The 1 year restriction, the cases explain that it's somewhat related to this idea of administrative finality and res judicata. So once you've decided something already, it's intended to ensure that there's consistency in the way that you're dealing with things. And if it's essentially the same application and you turn around and change your mind, then that's not a consistent or reliable approach. So that's kind of the purpose of the 1 year restriction. I found cases involving situations similar to this where the courts found, changes that are less than a complete change in the use to be material and substantial, and they said that could be considered a new application. My understanding was that under the USDO, whether or not this is a new application is something to be decided by the chief planning official. I think to the extent that you disagree with him, you can simply, repeat the same decision that was made the first time and explain that, you believe that it's the same application and you're coming to the same result.
I think that's really critical in terms of your discussion also, Glenessa, because the cases that Amy has cited do indicate that a project like this might be considered a new project or might not, depending on how you look at it. But the critical thing is that, according to the USDO, the planning commissioner has the right to make a decision as to whether it's a new application or a revision. And that's what we're acting on. And that's why I believe that we need to proceed with a decision. As she said, if we think that the project hasn't changed as much as it should have been to be a new project, I think it's immaterial because the planning commissioner has already made his ruling on that. And we could either approve it or disapprove it, as we did in the discussion a couple of months ago.
Al, this is Glenisa. Might I suggest that we maybe table this? It's because there seems to also be a red herring here regarding Chris Spencer's, sorry, I don't want to say it that way, Commissioner Spencer's interpretation of the USDO and what we're seeing here, because he referred to one section earlier, and then I referred to another section, and there may be a possible conflicting sections. And I also think that that's an issue we should really parse out as well.
Well, again, I don't know if you heard me. What the commissioner said, or the commissioner is the decider on whether or not to consider this a new application or not. And he's made the ruling that it's a new application.
So we have to dispose of it. I understand.
Okay, no problem. I got it.
Okay, are we back to, let me see here, screen share. Okay. Zach?
Sorry, rookie mistake. So Al, Martin, or Roman, I didn't know if you had any other questions or comments related to the relationship to existing development.
Nope.
Okay. So the next one, Al, you had commented that the size and scale of the proposed design with the frequent amount of traffic entering and exiting will make adjacent residential properties to the west and across Washington Avenue less desirable to occupy. Idling vehicles will have a negative environmental impact. Vehicles entering and exiting the facility will be a danger to pedestrians and cyclists. And the demolition of the two residences will result in a loss of affordable housing, resulting in additional negative fiscal impacts. And the in and out traffic will increase the danger of crashes at the intersection of Brevard and Washington and Colvin and Washington, as well as the access points to the development site.
I just want to add to that, and this relates to the comment that Chris made about Stewart's being a neighborhood-based organization. I don't disagree with that. I have a Stewart's that I walk to, and I think the Stewart's that was existing that you might have walked to on Morton Avenue was also one that without gasoline. That's not Stewart's model now. And some of the issues that I raised in this fiscal and environmental impact does impact me, even though it's nice to have a Stewart's up there from time to time that I use, and my wife uses much more than I do because she loves ice cream. The vehicles come in double park. They idle as they run in and get coffee. They park in illegal areas. So they create, even though this is a non-gasoline oriented Stewart's in my neighborhood, they do create vehicle problems, believe it or not. That's just my expansion of that comment.
Any other comments for this review standard? Okay, and so Al had brought up a lot of his comments with review standard I or 1. So those were already brought up. Martin, you had kind of presented a review when you had submitted comments. A lot of your comments were relating to the amount of open pavement that was used. And you kind of use this as a basic measure for pedestrian orientation, basically stating the more pavement dedicated to an auto-oriented use, the less space is available for other activities that are pedestrian-oriented. And so when you reviewed this project in relationship to two existing gas station convenience stores in Albany, the Sunoco across the street from the subject property, and the mobile station at Quayle Street and New Scotland Avenue, along with another example located in Savannah, Georgia, of an urban, and these are all urban gas station convenience store models. You looked at the percentage of the site that's dedicated to pavement versus the building, and the total area of pavement. And you also provided the caveat that buildings are usually more pedestrian oriented in general, but there are some instances where they could be dedicated to auto repair or garage. So keeping that in mind, these are the three sites again. The site across the street from the subject property, 253 New Scotland Avenue, which is a mobile station at the corner of Quayle and New Scotland Avenue. And then the last one is 222 Drayton Street, which is in Savannah, Georgia. And so you again pointed, there's a caveat of these are dimensions based on Google Maps and are approximate, but looking at the size of the proposed lots, the two locations within Albany have a similar percentage of the site dedicated to pavement area, which is about 84 or 85%. The location in Savannah uses a significantly less or a significantly lower percentage of pavement on the site, being 36%, which you go on to note that it's approximately 1/3 of this paved area is actually used for outdoor seating too. So there's an even larger percentage of the site that's used for more pedestrian oriented functions. I'll keep going on. You also made some notes about the lot size as well, which I think are reflected on the next slide as well. So again, as I had mentioned, the Albany comparison locations, approximately 85% of each lot is dedicated to pavement, and the size is just under 15,000 square feet devoted to or dedicated to pavement. The example in Savannah only has 3,500 square feet devoted to pavement, or 35% of the lot, with, again, as I just mentioned, some of it being used for trees and planters. And you go on to state that the Savannah example shows that urban gas stations can be successful with smaller footprints. The proposed Stewart's for this application is larger than the other three examples, with a total of 38,000 square feet of pavement, or 90% of the lot. And this is about 3 times more than the mobile station at New Scotland and Quayle Street. And so through this review, the proposed Stewart's is shown, in your opinion, to not only dedicate a higher percentage of the lot to auto-oriented uses as opposed to pedestrian-oriented uses, it also includes a much larger lots. And based on those considerations, you find that the proposed gas station and convenience store is at a fundamentally different scale than other gas stations that would be appropriate with the pedestrian-oriented nature of the MUNC zoning district.
Right, exactly. And I think the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Feel free to add on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I think that's my, my fundamental issue here is with the intent and kind of the vision of the zoning. I mean, we wouldn't have created this MUNC zoning district along Colvin Avenue if we didn't have some vision for what this street could eventually become and how important it could become for the neighborhood. And that was all part of a very extensive process of creating USDO. So I am not that having a large parking lot in order to sell fuel and convenience items, it might not be a good thing in certain places. But I just don't think it's here. I think this goes against the intent of the USDO, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that this place creates a very large parking lot, which would be an unpleasant place to walk to or through or past. So anyway, just to clarify some of my thinking there. With your peers thinking.
Sorry about that. Thanks for clarifying what I missed with that. And then Roman, you had added some comments as well. You had stated that you believe that the proposed use is consistent with the character of the neighborhood along Colvin, but it's inconsistent with the character of the neighborhood along Washington Avenue, which is residential. The changes to the architectural style of the convenience store do help with this respect, but the fuel island still remains visible along Washington Avenue. Landscaping along Washington Avenue could be utilized to lessen the effect of this difference in the neighborhood character. You go on to state that moving the underground storage tanks to the west side and relocating the parking spaces to the west, from the west boundary to the north side, would reduce noise, light, and activity near the residential uses. And finally, you go on to state that if the canopy and the fueling tanks, the fueling pumps were relocated behind the convenience store and visible along Colvin Avenue, that would reduce the concern of being consistent with the neighborhood character along Washington Avenue. So Roman, feel free to add on, and if any of the board members have any additional comments, discussion, feel free to chime in.
Just to be clear, the first bullet point is, and the second bullet point are the main concerns. The last two bullet points were just kind of thoughts that popped into my head that could help the application. If you reduce the impact to the neighbors to the west, the residential property to the nest and the character. But the big issues I had were the first two bullet points. The other two were just comments that I thought what might be helpful.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. So for the three board members that had submitted comments ahead of time, they didn't have any comments related to harmful cumulative impacts of aggregate similar uses. Is there any discussion, correction, addition to this? Okay. And same goes for burden on public improvements, facilities, services, utilities. Any discussion? Okay. And then for the last one, Martin and Roman, you did not have any comments for this. Al, you did provide a comment saying that it was not a necessary and desirable service that's in the interest of the public convenience because there are 5 vehicle filling stations within 3/4 of a mile from the proposed project, including the existing Sunoco that's right across the street. Many of those stations also offer drop-in convenience products, and you also go on to say that there are 2 major supermarkets at Central and Colvin that provide everything that a convenience store would not be able to provide. Any discussion or additional comments from any board members who haven't provided comments ahead of the meeting? Okay, and I believe that's it. So I think there was some discussion points among board members on some of the review standards. As conditional use permits are reviewed, the applicant has to meet all of the review criteria. So I think, in general, are there any other discussion topics that the board may want to bring up? Or the application or the review standards?
Nope,
I
I'm
would
good.
just mention in reference to the review standards to remind the board that that any one review standard that isn't met can be the deciding factor to not approve the proposal. It may not meet more than one, but if all 6 are met and 1 is not, it can still be turned down.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification on that, El.
If I could just clarify as well, to the extent that you might object because you believe it's the same application, I would just note that that's not one of the criteria. So you would need to say that you believe it's the same application and you would like to rule in the same way that you did the first time.
Thank you, Amy.
So it would be relying on that 4th criteria.
Are there any comments, further questions, further discussion? Okay, if not, I would like to put forth a motion. Amy, quick ruling from you. I believe the chair can put forth a motion.
I believe so. Zach, do you know, is there anything in the rules?
Yeah, there's nothing in the rules that prevent the chair from making a motion.
Yes, yeah, thank you. So I would put a motion on the floor to deny the application. Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Al, can I just jump in for one quick second?
No, we're in the middle of voting, or we're in the middle of discussing this.
Which
I don't even know who said that, but.
Well, actually, I'll interject just for a clarification.
Okay,
this is
you're
Roman.
talking, Roman?
Yeah,
okay.
So your motion to deny, just clarification, your motion to deny will be based upon which are the review standards, which numbers?
1, 4, 7. I mean, they were up there. Okay.
Okay, I just needed a clarification.
Yeah, in fact, I was just doing that by memory. I believe there was a 4th one, but they're not up on the screen. So anyway, we do have a motion to deny. We have a second. The second was by Glenisa Guillard. And
Zach, are you going to go through each number to vote on them?
Okay.
Yeah, Al, I'm sorry. I was just trying to jump in. I think maybe for clarity's sake, it might be good to go through each of the review standards if you do want to deny, and just have the board vote on each of them individually, just to make
Point of
sure.
order. Why is that in order? We're voting on a project, not on pieces of a project. Either we're going to do this thing up or down. And in point of order, we have a motion on the floor and has been duly seconded. It's time to vote.
Thank you. I think for clarification, the one thing that I will do, and I don't think we need to read every single one of these all over again or vote separately on them, but again, I believe that we can, for the record, indicate the conditional use review standards that we are using if we turn this down. And those are, to my memory, 1, 4, and 7. But I believe there's another one if you want to scroll quickly through them.
Yep, this is just, I just wanted to make sure it was clear and we were addressing
Yes,
all
but
of the review
right, so we're
standards
gonna
that you
vote.
wanted to vote on, that's
Right.
all. So,
Yes, so, but there we go, okay.
so there were
that's
comments
2.
made on the first, the second, you had made comments on the third, but
Third,
there were
that's
not.
the one I missed.
Okay.
And the 4th.
Yep, there were comments made by 3 of the members, and then for 5, 6, there were not, and then for 7,
Okay.
you had made comments on that. So,
those are the ones.
So
And that-
1,
and
2.
they can be read into the record.
So review standards 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get that for clarification.
Okay, further discussion. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to deny, please individually say aye.
Aye. Chris Ellis, aye.
Aye, Glenisa Gaylord.
Aye, Roman.
Aye, Al DeSalvo. Martin, are you there?
Sorry about that. Yes, Martin, aye, Martin.
Okay, the motion is denied unanimously. All righty. Thank you very much for all the patience, and to the Stewart's folks, I believe that you still have a great product. It's just that this is not the location for it. Zach, you do have some other business you wanted to bring up. We can do that now.
Yep, and just to Al's point as well, I just want to thank everyone for your patience. I was just trying to make sure that that was as clear as possible for the record so that we're accurately reflecting your viewpoints when this is filed with the city clerk. On a separate topic, for November 10th, this is currently scheduled as a workshop. We do have 2 potential items, the first being a conditional use permit application for 62 Dana Avenue, which was previously had a public hearing before the planning board. There were some questions and concerns related to city department comments and ensuring that it complied with city standards. It's been reviewed by the water department as well as engineering, and those department comments have been satisfied. There will be a condition placed on the application that the applicant needs to upgrade the water service for the property as a component of installing the stairs for the new access to the proposed 3rd unit. And then the second application is a new project that is being reviewed by the planning board, as well as the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Historic Resources Commission. So this just would be an opportunity for the planning board to declare themselves as lead agency. So I just wanted to ask the board their opinion on whether they would be comfortable with having this function as both a workshop and a meeting, or if they would rather leave that business for the already scheduled public meeting on the 24th.
What is the second item you mentioned? What property is that?
That's at 255 to 271 Clinton Avenue.
Oh, okay. That's the part of the proposed development for the property on Clinton Avenue that the Affordable Housing Partnership and the Community Loan Fund is proposing.
This is actually a separate project. This is done by Home Leasing. They have rehabbed some of the townhouses on the
Okay.
northern side of Clinton Avenue. And they're
Right.
looking to put parking. They're looking to modify the lots to put parking partially behind those townhouses and then partially to the east of those townhouses.
What do you see on the agenda for the regular November meeting beyond the workshop? In other words, the regular meeting being the 24th. Are there going to be significant other projects?
There's about 4 or 5 others. I think there are 2 that are potentially in the position to be acted upon. I think these items would be relatively quick for the board to review. So that's why I was making this suggestion. But I'll leave it to the board if you have any other questions in order to determine whether you want to do this or not.
Well, we would be having a workshop anyway. Would the board be willing to entertain these 2 items as an actual meeting? It'll probably, sounds like it may shorten our November 24th meeting a little bit.
Hi, Al, this is Glenisa. That's what I wanted to clarify. If we put this in as a meeting, would that be, well, why? I think I missed it. So I think one of my questions is, why are we entertaining this as a meeting? Why are we bringing this forward so quickly? Is there a deadline we're not seeing here? But then the next question is it going to negate our 24th meeting, because that's also Thanksgiving week, and I'm not sure what people have plans. I know that's COVID and everything, but that still doesn't negate other people's plans in that meeting.
Yeah, and thank you for that question. So there are some items that are still responding to department comments and other comments that wouldn't be ready in time for the meeting on the 10th. The items, the 2 items that I talked about with 255 to 271 Clinton Avenue, the review process, among the planning board, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Historic Resources Commission. Really the first step of that is having one of those entities or an involved agency declare lead agency. So really this is just, not delaying the process any further and allowing these entities as well as other entities to begin, a formal review of the application. Really, when we've done lead agency declaration in the past, it's a very quick presentation from the applicant before having the board either decide whether or not they want to act as lead agency. So it's a relatively quick item to dispense of, and it's not creating a further delay just based on the planning board having a standardized meeting schedule. For 62 Dana Avenue, the applicant had submitted, I believe in June or July, and they've just been working with city departments to respond to comments. So just due to that somewhat longer review process, that's why, since there's an existing workshop on the 10th, this is providing an opportunity to move an item from the 24th agenda so that the board can act on it sooner, and also reduce the amount of time for the meeting on the 24th. Since it is the week of Thanksgiving, trying to make that meeting as quick as possible, but ensuring, the fullest review as possible.
Any other thoughts? Would the board entertain having those 2 items as a regular planning board meeting as well as the workshop, in which I'm assuming we'd see some of the projects that are going to be proposed for our review on November 24th? Yeah, okay. I see Zach's moving his head up and down.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Visual and audio confirmation.
Sorry, who said that?
That was me, Al. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Will the board agree with this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
Fine with it.
I'm fine.
Okay. Alrighty, then we will have a meeting and the workshop together on the 24th, on the 10th. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Move
moved.
to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for all your patience.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night. Take
Good
care.
night.
Hey, Zach,
Yep.
on the hard copy of the USO that I got, it's the one that's dated April 2017. Were there huge changes made to that since then or no?
We've had, I believe, 5 or 6 zoning map amendments in between the time the USDO being adopted and now.
Yeah.
So not a lot of changes. All of those have been to the board. I think there was the Radix project in the South End that got rezoned.
It's kind of the projects we've already discussed, right?
Yeah, they've been before the planning board already.
Okay. All right. So but for general discussion, like we were talking here, conditional use, all that kind of stuff and references, I'm still good looking at that hard copy then.
You can look there, and then on our website, we have a section called USDO administration, and that lists all of the previous zoning map amendments that have been made. I think there are some changes, like for the 76 that haven't been incorporated into our GIS yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you have any questions about the current zoning map and whether it's accurately reflecting, the current zoning, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay. But it sounds like the bottom line is just for our purposes, whenever we have a conditional use or something, it's going to be new to us, which means it'll be new to the USDO that I have too.
The conditional use permit being new, how?
Yeah. I mean, other the 6 or 7 conditional use requirements, none of that's has been changed or anything like that.
No, those review standards haven't been changed as part of like a text amendment. No.
Okay. All right. Like demolition review and all that kind of stuff. That's all. Nothing's changed there. So,
except for the most recent text amendment for like conditions placed on a demolition review approval or a development plan review approval that we just talked about
right
at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Those have been modified since, but for conditional use permit standards, those review standards haven't been changed since the USDO was adopted.
Okay. All right. Because I was just thinking, it's like when I actually looked at the date the other day, I said, well, that was because I had the other one from February and I got rid of that. And I said, well, this one's April. I'm thinking, well, gee, I know we've had some changes, but how will it change, other than that recent change that was made, how does it affect us? So, okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
All righty.
Perfect.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
You too.
And really, you should be like, what did Al call you? Deputy planner or chief planner or what?
Just so